contacts and a team here in Manila and in the Philippines as well. So it's really a great pleasure. And this webinar on sustainable mobility comes really at a very appropriate moment as we mark World Bicycle Day tomorrow and World Environment Day this Saturday. Sustainable mobility, particularly cycling, are critical in building sustainable cities. This is why we at the French Embassy are proud to contribute to the development of cycling in the Philippines through this webinar. Last February, we were honored to have been able to meet and exchange with several cycling advocates in the Philippines through a webinar we organized for the French global event, the Night of Ideas. Across the world, cities are seeking to reduce the use of cars in order to limit greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. 1 out of 8 deaths in the world are caused by air pollution. So it's so important that we find an alternative way, soft and active mobility, such as cycling, scooters, rollerblades, walking, are being encouraged not only for the positive effect on the environment, but also on people's health. The public has also been pushed to adopt other forms of mobility as a consequence of COVID-19 restriction measures that have limited public transportation. Metro Manila is a sprawling region made up of 16 cities with nearly 13 million residents. Its inhabitants, its local governments and private stakeholders are all struggling to cope with the urban challenges they face: flooding, waste management, pollution, heavy traffic, and many more. In a country where 88% of its population does not own a private vehicle, people living in urban centers use the bicycle for their daily travels. Encouraging cycling as a popular mode of transport could therefore be a path to a new mobility scheme that is more respectful of the environment and more inclusive. There are different levers of action to encourage this mode of transport among the population, such as building new and improving existing infrastructure, adopting inclusive public policies, and introducing the public to the benefits of cycling through education. However, it also raises new challenges, such as ensuring cyclists' safety and their coexistence with other road users, or ensuring the accessibility of cycling as a factor of social justice, which is at the heart of mobility issues. In this regard, and considering the growing enthusiasm of Filipinos for cycling, the French Embassy in the Philippines has decided to join other European embassies in the Philippines, and in particular the Netherlands Embassy, to share the good practices developed in Europe in favor of a culture of cycling. I'm convinced that this webinar will also contribute to highlighting the main issues and solutions to support the development of cycling in a big metropolis such as Manila. I take this occasion also to personally congratulate the work of French volunteers in the Philippines, the country that welcomes the largest number of French volunteers in Asia and third leading destination for French volunteers in the world. Each year before the pandemic, the Philippines welcomed more than 80 new volunteers based not only in Metro Manila, but all over the archipelago. Volunteering is critical to the organizational model by providing a direct and intimate link with communities all over the world, and by enabling social development and humanitarian action on a scale that would be impossible otherwise. If managed well, volunteering itself can also deliver enormous benefits for individuals. Benefits such as social inclusion, building self-confidence, gaining or honing skills, and promoting social engagement towards a more active, enlightened, and compassionate citizenry. Thanks to the volunteers and the structures that welcome them, the NGOs and the French Filipino Network now have a primary role in development work, particularly in the areas of sustainable development, education, and the social integration of disadvantaged populations, which are all crucial to building a greener and more inclusive society, with soft mobilities, such as cycling, being at the intersection of these themes. I would like to warmly thank again France Volontaires for the organization of this important and very relevant event, and for its daily coordination in the service of volunteers and NGOs. Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Madam. You know, it's really exciting for us to host this webinar to discuss, you know, the boom here in the Philippines about, you know, I think Mr. Punzalan cited earlier that, you know, year on year from 2019 to 2020, there was an increase of almost twofold, of more than two times, you know, the boom in bike importations. You know, so it's an honor to have you here. Thank you. All right, up next, to discuss the progress and measures taken by local agencies for sustainable transportation, we have another distinguished guest. He is a graduate of UP Diliman with a degree in public administration and governance and a master's degree in urban and regional planning and transportation planning. He is a licensed environmental planner and is now the Senior Transportation Development Officer of the Department of Transportation of the Philippines. Please welcome Mr. Eldon Janicio.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, Her Excellency, Michelle Bocos, to the France Volunteer team, and my co-panelists, Kevin, Keisha, and Ms. Anne, and to all the participants in this webinar. Good morning po, magandang umaga po sa lahat. My presentation will focus on the government's efforts to embed active mobility and the overall transportation framework in the Philippines. And yeah, I would like to reiterate what Her Excellency mentioned earlier, that the pandemic really awakened the planners, the decision makers here in the Philippines to reshape our spaces and accommodate a more responsive and resilient roads in spite of the amidst of the pandemic. So sorry. Ms. Manel, can you share my presentation? I apologize.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Can you see it? Is it on the screen?
Not yet. I think I'm just seeing a gray screen.
Paulo, maybe you can try to share it because I think I'm having trouble with my. Oh, I will try again.
Sorry. Okay.
It's okay. Wait, is it working now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
To the second slide. Are you guys able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we can proceed to the second slide. Okay. So this maybe we can have presenters view. Sorry, I can't see the whole screen.
Okay, so maybe I think I'm having trouble, Paulo. Maybe you can share it if it's possible. Yeah, it would be better, I think.
I'll be the one to share it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So the infographic that I will be showing in a while will focus on basically an overview of how the bike lane networks is being realized here in the metropolitan areas of the Philippines. So the bike lane networks being built right now is mandated by Republic Act number 11494, or Bayanihan to Recover as One Act. So they mandated the Department of Transportation and other government agencies and provided funds to establish bike lane networks in the Philippines. Next slide, please. So yeah, the active transportation policies is ingrained in our certain national statutes, and here in item 2 we can see the planning process for the development of the cycling networks, and next is the infrastructure and network design, and item 4 is the coverage of the Bayanihan 2 bike lane networks. Next slide, please. So back in 2008, we already have a national policy and an executive order that mandated various government agencies to transform road infrastructure to prioritize non-motorized transportation. But it is only, I think, last year that the government really pushed for actually building the appropriate infrastructure to allow active mobility. So we have the RA 11494 that I've mentioned earlier, which provided funds to build the bike lane networks and other active infrastructure, active transport projects. We have the DOH, Department of Health, Department of Interior and Local Government, Department of Transportation, and Department of Public Works and Highways Joint Administrative Order 2020-001, which delineates the roles of different government agencies and LGUs on how to implement and promote their active transport projects, programs, and policies. And this last year, for the first time ever as well, the DPWH and DOTR produced the guidelines on the design of bike facilities. Basically, we can see here the design standards for the different components of active transport infrastructure. And I'll just give an update that soon, I think next week, the DPWH will be issuing a supplemental guidelines to further improve the guidelines issued last year. I'll just share the guidelines to the group once available. And lastly, the DOTR issued a department order for the guidelines and protocols for active transportation and light mobility vehicles, which provides basically the guidelines on equipment, road and traffic protocols, not only for cyclists and personal mobility device users, but also for the motor vehicle drivers as well, on how they can properly interact and share the road with other road users, basically the cyclists. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the DOTR, at least the active transport team of the DOTR, focused on the planning of the bike lane networks. So we used as reference a bike lane network map developed by ICSC, the Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities, Manila Moves, and University of Twente. So they have this very comprehensive bike lane network. Basically, they just plot all major roads in Metro Manila. Since the funds provided by the Bayanihan 2 is limited, and we have to implement it in a very short period of time, we had to prioritize certain roads and for the Bayanihan 2 bike lane networks. So next is we overlaid the land usage in the identified metropolitan areas to check the key activity areas and fundamental facilities and the identified locations for us to properly prioritize the routes for the bike lane networks. And after that, we checked various studies, transport studies and transport studies and transport surveys for us to check certain data like boarding and alighting, origin, destination, to further prioritize the routes. So basically, we select the routes wherein the origin destination of the commuters are the highest. And lastly, we gathered road crash data from MMDA primarily and LGUs as well. And we select the roads where road crash incidents are the highest. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of the infrastructure and network design. So after collating the mentioned data, we identified the routes, and we decided to establish the bike lane networks and the national and primary roads in the metropolitan areas for us to have a very direct route. And since the national roads are jurisdiction of DOTR and DPWH. So the different classifications of the bike lanes depends on the road characteristics, primarily the average daily traffic and the motor vehicle speed. So we can see here we have different classes of bike lanes. Class 1, which is the most protected bike lanes. It is separated from the carriageway. Class 2 bike lanes, it is protected by bollards and curbs or pavement markings. And lastly, Class 3, the mixed traffic bike lanes with bicycles having the priority over motor vehicles. Next slide, please. So for the purpose of the Bayanihan 2 law, we prioritize the country's metropolitan areas, considering that the law is an economic recovery law. We decided to establish first bike lane networks in areas where economic activities are the highest. So that's Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, and Metro Davao. So you can see here the different road sections and the corresponding number of kilometers per road section. So the kilometer length is in both ways already. So this is for Metro Manila. These are the national and primary roads identified. Next slide, please. Same for Metro Cebu. We have identified certain primarily major roads and some secondary roads in the metropolitan Cebu. Next slide, please. And in Davao. Next slide, please. So this is just a short update on the progress of the Bayanihan 2 bike lanes. So we have an overall accomplishment of 65.13%, but we have already covered 81.78% of the overall length of the bike lanes, or 427 kilometers out of the target 522 kilometers of bike lane networks combined in Metro Manila, Cebu, and Davao. Next slide, please. So this is just a detailed breakdown of the road sections per metropolitan areas. Next slide, please. And some photos of the bike lane networks established. So on the leftmost side of the screen, you can see here a class 2 bike lanes. The middle one is a class 1 bike lane in Cebu. And the rightmost is also a class 2 bike lane, only with the pavement marking in Metro Cebu as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we can just breeze through the following slides. This is just the sample photos of the bike lanes established in various metropolitan areas. Next. Next slide, please. I think it's okay if you don't play the videos na Pao.
Sorry, it won't play.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's proceed to the next slide na lang. So you can see here that the DPWH also placed solar road studs. So this is the illuminating light on the road that you can see at night for better visibility. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. I can just provide the participants a copy of the presentation if they would like to see the detailed updates for each road section in all the metropolitan areas. Next slide, please. I think we can proceed. Yeah, next slide. Next slide, please. Yep, next slide. This is C5, Ross Boulevard area in EDSA. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can proceed to the next slide. Thank you. So for 2022, we requested funds for us to expand the Bayanihan to bike lanes in Metro Manila, Cebu, and Davao, and also establish bike lanes in other emerging urban areas in the Philippines. So hopefully, if ever the House of Representatives and the Senate grant us the funds, we'll be able to establish at least, I think, 400 kilometers again of bike lanes all over the different provinces and cities in the Philippines. Next slide, please. We also requested funds for us to implement a bike sharing program in Metro Cebu and Davao. Next slide, please. So another project of the department to promote active transportation and of course sustainable mobility is the greenways or an elevated walkway. So next slide, please. So yeah, the presence of major business districts along the EDSA corridor produces a lot of short trips for the people doing business in the area. So with that, we identified the 4 locations with very high foot traffic to have an elevated pedestrian walkway. Next slide, please. So these are the sample perspectives. So the elevated walkway is a 5-meter wide walkway, which will traverse across the EDSA to the activity areas in the selected business districts. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we have identified 4 locations as mentioned. So we have one in starting from Balintawak, the north area, which have a 1.6 kilometer length. And in Cabao, we have a 1.1 kilometer length of pedestrian walkway. Next slide, please. And one in Guadalupe and one in Taft. So we have a total of 4.6 kilometers of elevated walkways that will be established and will be operational by the second quarter of 2024. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's all. I forgot to mention that we are now also ramping up our IEC, Information Education Campaign, for the guidelines and protocols for active transport and light mobility vehicles. So we're placing the materials along different government offices, commercial establishments, the billboards along major roads like EDSA and C5, and certain malls in the Philippines. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Junicio. That was a beautiful presentation. I'm personally astounded by how many kilometers, hundreds of kilometers are being built and have been built across the Philippines. And I think in Metro Manila alone, 270 kilometers na. So, you know, that's a far cry from what it's been, especially when I started biking back in 2015. I think it was only in Marikina pa lang where they had, you know, just a makeshift bike thing. But to see the progress and the future plans, especially for, you know, alternative, you know, sustainable mobility is really promising. And thank you for your hard work. It's really amazing. Thank you. All right. So, guys, to our audience members, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box. We'll try to get them answered later at the Q&A portion. So moving forward, and for our next speaker, From the Dutch Embassy, he is a senior policy officer for economic and public affairs at the Netherlands Embassy in Manila. His work currently focuses on the promotion of Dutch ideas and solutions for sustainable transportation, focusing on cycling. He spearheads the development of relationships with potential partners in the public, private, and CSO sectors in the Philippines, and linking these with the Dutch Cycling Embassy in the Netherlands. He also has academic experience, having taught at the Philippine tertiary institutions and worked in the civil society sector as well. We would like to welcome from the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the Philippines, Mr. Kevin Punzalan.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for that warm introduction and welcome. Allow me also to extend my appreciation to the Embassy of France in the Philippines, represented here by Her Excellency Ambassador Bocos, and to France Volontaires and the BAYANIHAN Sadaan for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. So, let's get started. Let me see if I'm able to share my screen now. There we go. Okay, does it view normally?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Very, very good. So thank you again for that opportunity to speak. I'd like to discuss a bit about the concept of Dutch cycling diplomacy. Because of the way that we've developed our approach, I've realized a couple of insights about how promoting cycling also requires a promotion of road safety for all users of the road, as well as building in consultative democracy as well. And I'd like to say that while this is something that we're quite proud of in our approach, I also believe it's an approach that can be taken by all actors of society here, other embassies, for instance, and CSOs, to build an approach that is truly sustainable in the long run and takes into account, as Ambassador Bacos mentioned, of the most vulnerable people in society. Now, one of the things I'd like to start with is one of the challenges in promoting cycling, especially in a country like the Philippines. One of the most common questions I've encountered is, how can you share ideas about cycling from the Netherlands or from Europe more broadly when those countries have always been too different, that they've always been too bike friendly? Well, this is what I usually explain. It comes as a surprise to many that as late as the early 1970s, the Netherlands itself was also transitioning to a more car-centric culture. So as late as that period, the Netherlands was also, following the lead of many other countries in the developed world in building more wider and faster roads. But what changed all that? One of the things that really made a difference was the oil crisis of 1973, which made fuel expensive and limited access to it, leading many to rediscover the affordability and accessibility of cycling. So let me illustrate how rapid and how radical that change was. So on screen, you'll see a picture of one of the main boulevards of the city of Utrecht, which is the road called the Katerijn Single, which was formerly a canal and turned into a multi-lane highway in the 1970s. So as you can see, that's the road itself does not look very bike friendly, and indeed it wasn't. And it also damaged the cultural heritage of the downtown area of Utrecht. So a decision was made in the 2000s to demolish this road and to actually restore the canal which once flowed through the city. And this is the very same location in the 2010s. As you can see, the road is completely gone. Instead, it's been replaced by pedestrian and cycle paths, and the waterway has been restored, which goes to show that change truly is possible, even in a relatively short span of time. Now, another thing I want to discuss was the role that civil society played in shifting cities to become more cycling friendly. In the case of the Netherlands, there were two movements that helped drive a shift towards a more cycling friendly society. The first was a movement in Amsterdam started by parents who wanted to stop the rising fatalities of children in collisions of motorists, also called the Kindermoord movement. The parents wanted different streets and safer streets for their children because too many were being killed by cars. This was supplemented by the formation of a lobby group called the Cyclist Union, which called for genuine cycling policies, not just cycling paths, but laws that protected cyclists and pedestrians. And they together helped create the modern road safety laws that are in existence in the Netherlands today. So together, these movements built on civic attitudes towards cycling and eventually shaped both policies and funding decisions for infrastructure. So how does that translate to modern Dutch cycling policy today? The Dutch approach is neatly summarized by what we call the 5 good design principles. So you can see them on screen. Allow me to explain them in brief. The first, cohesion, is a way of promoting cycling as a means of transport by ensuring that cyclists can go from any point to their destination. Directness is about offering the cyclist as direct a route as possible with minimum detours. Safety, of course, refers not just to road safety, but also personal health, reducing points of stress and minimizing exposure to pollutants and noise. Comfort, on the other hand, refers to ensuring that it takes the least effort for a cyclist to get from point A to B, meaning limiting obstacles. And lastly, attractiveness is all about ensuring that bicycle infrastructure is not only safe and convenient, but also pleasing and even fun to ride on. There is also an unspoken but integrated principle where there is a conscious decision to give priority to people over cars. So pedestrians and cyclists have a more important role in the planning hierarchy over motor vehicles. So now that we have the principles, how exactly are they put into action around the world? Well, there is a framework called the Dutch Cycling Vision, which was created by the institution called the Dutch Cycling Embassy, which is a knowledge and business network with over 70 members across the private sector, civil society, and the academe. And they created a framework which has basically 3 pillars: software, hardware, and orgware. In brief, software is policy knowledge, including road safety principles. Hardware refers to technical knowledge, which is the design of infrastructure, such as traffic calming measures, separated bike lanes, and the like. And some of these standards, or most of these standards rather, are encapsulated in the Crow Foundation's manuals for bicycle traffic and road safety, whose cover you see on the screen. And finally, orgware brings together all the actors active in the sector and can help provide the glue for institutions to work towards making these changes happen. So in the Philippines, we've decided to put together these principles by engaging with different sectors of society because we believe that it is a multi-sectoral approach that truly brings together lasting change. In the public sector, we focus on capacity building and design standards. With the private sector, networking with professionals and business development. And with civil society, we focus on advocacy and education. The picture you see, by the way, is of Ayala Avenue. And the Dutch Cycling Embassy worked together with the Makati Commercial Estate Association and Ayala Land, as well as cycling advocates, to ensure that, number one, the bike lane was wide enough, and secondly, that the bike lane was placed on the correct, i.e. the safer lane in that multi-lane avenue. Another example of our cycling diplomacy is the organization of knowledge sharing and networking events. So this is an example of an event we organized last year, where we worked together with government, with civil society, and the private sector to share knowledge across the 3 pillars of the Dutch cycling vision, as I mentioned earlier. Other examples of Dutch cycling knowledge are the design standards that we try to share with our partners throughout the world. One recommendation includes a minimum width of 225 centimeters for bike lanes, which allows cyclists, 2 cyclists at least, to cycle side by side, which allows the differently abled cyclists to also share the road with the more athletic, to say the least, cyclists. Another example of Dutch design standards are what we call protected intersections, which allows cyclists to safely turn right without coming into conflict with cars. As you can see on screen, there is a protected curb that forces cars to slow down and turn at the right angle and to give way to cyclists to prevent what, as they call in the Philippines, sideswiping of cyclists. And this is an example of a Dutch dedicated cycling path, which is totally separated from the carriageway. I also note with interest that the design of this cycling path closely mirrors the one that has been built in Cebu, which I'm very happy about, because when roads are designed for a speed higher than 50 kilometers per hour, it is much safer to separate the cycling path completely from motor vehicles. And for my last example of Dutch cycling infrastructure to share, to inspire others perhaps, is the construction of dedicated cycling highways, which actually allow cyclists a direct path to tourism destinations and allows the connection of different municipalities through cycling infrastructure. We also have a couple of events coming up, which might be of interest to all of you. First of all, we are screening the Dutch documentary Why We Cycle tomorrow and on Saturday, which is entirely for free. So all you have to do if you'd like to join is to scan that QR code or to check out our own Facebook page. We're also organizing a talk around the film, bringing in together the private sector and civil society tomorrow as well, in partnership with the Makati Business Club. So that brings my presentation to a close. In summary, the message I'd like to leave with you all is that the Dutch approach to cycling diplomacy isn't us telling the rest of the world what to do, but to work together with stakeholders from all sectors of society to come up with solutions together. So we hope that that message resonates and that we can continue to find partners to work together with. And I think it's a model as well that can be adapted by many others. It's not something exclusive to us, but we hope it inspires the rest of you. So thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Punzalan. That was really excellent. As we all know, the Netherlands really has been always an example of, how they implemented cycling as a mode, as one of the largest modes of transportation in the cities. And seeing how they were able to transform from what looks like Quiapo to what it is now, the picture you showed in 2017, it's amazing of what is possible with, like what you said, when you work together. You have to work together to have sustainable and, to make it happen. Thank you very much, sir. And again, I would like to, reiterate what you're saying. You're going to be filming the Why We Cycle movie. So if anyone here is interested in watching it, please check out their Facebook page or, scan the QR code. We'll make sure to get it on the Facebook page so that you can view it on the dates that was mentioned here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Matthew.
Okay, so up next, allow me to introduce our next speaker. She is an environmental planner and urban cyclist. Aside from working as a local urban planning consultant for the World Bank, she is also the founder of Life Cycles Philippines, a group dedicated to providing bikes to frontliners during the pandemic. She is also a part of the Move as One coalition, which continuously pushes for better public transport and safer bike infrastructures in Metro Manila. She also works with Clean Air Asia as a consultant to help usher in electric mobility in Pasig City. Please welcome Ms. Keisha Mayuga.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you again for the invitation, and always happy to see my co-panelists here. And we've been working at it for more than a whole year now, I think, and you'll see that in my presentation, which you should be seeing now. Okay, so I hope you can see it. So I'm really going to do like a flashback with what Kevin did, but in the context of the Philippines. So my presentation is called Cycling is Here to Stay, a brief overview of active transportation wins in the Philippines. So it wasn't really the job of one, it was really the job of a lot of us on how we got where we are now. So just a little bit of context pre-COVID. I think most of us from the Philippines are familiar. This is EDSA. Cycling wasn't so mainstream, and infrastructure was really focused for motorized vehicles And cycling on main roads was discouraged and deemed dangerous. Not a lot of people saw biking as a viable means to commute. But then when the pandemic came, that's when public transportation wasn't available, and a lot of people resorted to either walking or cycling, which is very new. Before the pandemic, people thought cycling was something recreational, something for exercise, but as people recognized the need for transport, people also started cycling and walking more. So no public transport equals more walking and biking. And as a response to that, we actually started a little bit over a year ago when we did our first EDSA pop-up exercise on May. And that was really just the start of everything, because before that, we didn't imagine people to be cycling on EDSA. And then, slowly cities started putting up their pop-ups. This was almost a year ago. In San Juan City, they actually launched this on World Bicycle Day 2020. So that was, happy anniversary to San Juan City. And also Taguig did the same, and Mandaluyong, they started putting up their pop-ups just a year ago. And of course, Bikers United Movement, before Marshals, also put up their bike lanes along Commonwealth. And I think Anne will talk about that a little bit about that later on. And as more and more people started to cycle, we, civil society, partnered up with the government and the government agencies involved in making this happen to create one of the longest pop-ups that we've had ever in our history, 10.7 kilometers along EDSA. So you can see pre-COVID up on the photo on the top. And when we did the pop-up down here, we saw that, hey, you know what, we could really do this. We could make this something long-term and not just during the pandemic. So here are some more photos. And this was really the collaboration of different cycling groups, civil society groups, and the government. So collaboration really is key. And we saw throughout the pandemic, more and more people, again, were seeing cycling as a viable means to really get to work and get around and get to their essentials. We could see it from this November 2020 SWS survey. Majority of the people really said they could see their city to be a great place for cycling and walking, and roads will be better off if public transportation, bicycles, and pedestrians are given priority over private vehicles. And another statistic from the 2020 labor survey is they saw a lot of workers, especially in the service sector, cycling, and they see that it's an accessible form of transportation going to work. So that wouldn't really have been possible if it wasn't for the collaboration of different people, different civil society groups, different embassies, different government sectors, government offices. So I'm just going to show a little bit of what everyone has been doing. So volunteers donated bicycles to essential workers. So we could see here on the left is Gretchen Paul. She actually helped give more than 1,000 bicycles to people so that they could, get to work or have work through cycling. And here on the right is also Life Cycles PH, which started a little bit over a year ago to help essential workers also get to work through bikes. And of course, I think Kevin mentioned this earlier already, you could see the partnership really together with everyone in making this possible, because we're all new to this and we're all learning. So this was in partnership with, again, different civil society groups, the government sector, the Embassy of the Netherlands, and we see more and more people really, getting together to do this. We even had our bike workshops because everybody was new to it, and everybody, all the cities and municipalities were asking, how do we even get started? So we're fortunate enough to have such a growing and such a great cycling community to help each other make this mainstream and make this not just for the pandemic. And here again, Bikers United movement on the left, civil society really played a huge role in pushing for the advocacy, and it's still continuous. Here on the right, you can see there's a call for volunteers, and I'm joining it tomorrow also for bike counting, because that's one of the things that is really important to see the impact of everything that we've done to cycling. So if you want to be part of the bike counting, you can check out ICSC and you start counting bikes on World Bike Day. So and cyclists continue to give back to the community, not just promoting cycling, but also giving back. So this is an initiative by Mobile in Manila. When the community pantries started springing up, a bunch of cyclists actually helped give supplies to these different community pantries, and it was really great to see the deployment of these different goods, etc., through bikes. And it really goes to show that you can really do a lot on a bike. So of course, private sector also supported active transport. You can see here on the left, these were just recently launched bike parking / art installations. And again, here on the right, Bikers Manual, which was in partnership with SM and DOTR, MMDA, and civil society as well. So, and here, more private sector efforts, aside from providing the infrastructure, we also see that there are changes. So we're helping businesses slowly become more bike friendly too. And we can see it in the ads here. You can see it in the photo on the right. More and more businesses and the private sector are really pushing for cycling as a normal part of life. And I think Eldon already mentioned a lot of this earlier, but in just 1 year, we were able to put so many policies and put up so much infrastructure. And it's really hopeful for us as a community that if we could do this in a year, imagine what we can do in the next year and in the next few years for the cycling community and for all road users. So I think Eldon already also talked about this, but yeah, this is more than we've ever built before in our past. And within just 1 year, pop-ups became protected lanes. Yeah, so more photos. We are building more bike infrastructure than ever before. So it really goes to show that, if you build it, they will actually come. And these are numbers reported by the Department of Health on 2 case studies in 2 different cities. One is in a municipality near Cebu, Cordova. Previously, they didn't have bike lanes, but when they established 1.5 kilometers in one stretch of road, they saw an immediate increase of 326% more cyclists on that road, and no bike-related incidents so far. And on the bottom table, you can see this is a recent count by Pasig City. You could actually see that there are more cyclists than there are cars. So it really goes to show that the infrastructure, the community, this whole normalizing cycling is really not the work of one and not just infrastructure. It's fostering the whole community and making it normal for everyone to get on a bike and get anywhere on a bike. So active transport is here to stay in the Philippines even after COVID. I just want to share this quote to close by Dr. Robbie C. From the Move as One Coalition. One day we will look back on this period and recall that it was when we revised our priorities and shifted away from outdated private car-oriented transport policies of the last century to embrace inclusive, people-centered, and environment-friendly approaches. We are part, all of us in this room, we are part of this change, and we are part of this, history and paradigm shift into better transport in the Philippines. So with that, I'd like to thank you and close to this. This is basically the whole slide, all of my slides pictured in one slide. That's just 1 year of a difference, exactly 1 year. So thank you, and I hope to see you all on the road, and happy Bicycle Day, World Bicycle Day tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha, for that wonderful presentation. You know, what really struck me was how much has been achieved in 1 year by you and everyone else here. And it's, you know, it's amazing on how quickly things developed. And like what you said in your presentation, build it and they will come. And definitely, you know, a lot has been built and a lot of people are coming definitely to ride those bike lanes to make it safer. And I just want to remind everyone that it's collaboration. Collaboration is always key. And with your closing remark earlier, it's also when we revise our priorities, make it more people-centered, you know, and make a shift towards more environmental friendly means to help, you know, mitigate this crisis that we're experiencing, you know, climate change and global warming. So thank you very much. All right. So definitely not the least, our last speaker, this woman is someone who wears many hats. She is a sustainable lifestyle advocate. During the height of the pandemic, she and her friends formed the Bikers United movement, which can be greatly credited for the creation of the bike lanes we are currently enjoying. She also founded an online community, food production and preservation during a lockdown that pushes backyard farming for food sustainability. She is also an advocate of gender equality and anti-domestic violence, giving talks and lectures all over the country for the past 4 years. She was a former manager of OPM artists like Asin, The Dawn, Barbie's Cradle, Bamboo, Noel Cobangon, and the iconic band, of course, The Eraserheads, and many, many more. Mother of 5, author of self-help books, She Hacks. We have here with us Miss Anne Angala.
Good morning. Thank you, Matthew. Good morning. Hi, Keisha. Hi, everyone. You know, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces here, and it's, you know, very nice to see warm people here, and ang daming participants, 43. So I guess I'd love to make my presentation now. I'd like to introduce it. Let me pull up my screen. Okay. Are we seeing it right? Tama ba? What I'm showing?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to introduce to you Bikers United Movement. Thank you for mentioning BUM. Keisha.
Second here.
So this is
Excuse me, Anne?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Can you move closer so we can hear it better? Because I don't know if it's the issue for everyone, but I can't hear you very well.
Okay. How is it now? Maybe it's my mic. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, it's better now. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
It's my mic way down.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
it's wonderful that Keisha gave a very huge overview already of what's happening in the Philippines in terms of cycling. So let me share with you Bikers United Movement as we are known by a few of you. We're advocates of inclusive mobility and sustainable transport that benefits the ordinary Filipino. So we're out there on the streets and helping the people directly. So we're a network of advocates. We started June 1 when the Metro Manila opened up to GCQ, because you know we bike commute. We're 7 friends, and then we just thought that, you know, the people who are newbies on the road, yung mga kabibili lang ng mga bikes, and these frontliners who aren't really, you know, used to facing traffic. So when we already saw that it was going to open up to GCQ, we formed this small group called Bikers United Movement. So we had our first year anniversary yesterday. So this is our anniversary picture in front of Quezon City Hall. So what we do? So noong June 1, we started the pop-up bike lanes in Commonwealth, because we know that Commonwealth is the most dangerous highway, having 10 lanes across, in a lot of different transportations use Commonwealth. There are the buses, I don't know if there are jeepneys there, but I guess there are. So that's very dangerous. And then we did the bike count, and before nag-open yung pandemic, we did like 1,200 per hour. So during the rush hour, which is 6 to 8, there were like 1,400. And at the end of 3 months, there's already like almost 5,000 using the lanes. So we do and we also do marshalling of the bike lane. So we don't just put it up, but we make sure that we marshal them. We stay on the roads and face the buses and the jeeps and the motorcycles who attempt to enter the pop-up bike lanes that we did. We also do roadside emergency. So all of us, we have like first aid kits. So if anything happens to any of the cyclists or any road user for that matter, then we can assist them with first aid. And we also do mechanics. So we have like a few mechanics with us when we do the pop-up bike lane. So kung may nasisiraan on the road, then we're there to help them. We distribute also protective gear, and then we lobby for policies also. So we've done a lot of talks with LGUs of late, like I can't mention anymore. It's too like a lot of them are already putting up the bike lanes or in the process of doing that. So in a nutshell, that's what Bikers United movement has done, and we turned one, as I mentioned, just yesterday. So where are we now in the Philippines? It was mentioned already that I'm so happy to hear DOTR's plans from Sir Eldon, and from the bottom of our hearts, really thank you. And we also saw a lot of improvements here of Kisha, one of the best city planners I've seen, and she works with a lot and collaborates with a lot of cities and organizations. So again, civil society and government working together will bring us forward to where we wanna go. So here we have Quezon City, the bike lanes, and it's great that we see those who don't follow the rules of the usage of the bike lanes get apprehended. We see the mayor of San Juan, using the bike lanes himself, so he understands how the bike commuters really feel. And of course, a lot of Metro Manila cities also have adopted the bike lanes too, and they're building and continuously building. So not only on the national level, which DOTR is doing, but of course on the LGU level, Cebu City, Iloilo, which is we're seeing Iloilo beautiful bike lanes, and very very green because they use plants as barriers. And also Davao, they set up, I don't know, it's 150 million set aside to construct bike lanes. So I don't know how far Davao is into this, but all these wonderful news about bike lanes are really welcome for all of us bike commuters. So kudos to all the cities and to the whole Philippines for taking on sustainable transport. So I was assigned to talk about wish list coming from the lens of a bike commuter, because I've been bike commuting for the past 3 years. So pre-pandemic, we've seen how horrible it is, and now we're seeing bike lanes, but still we're a long way to go, even if we're seeing cities. And I'm not complaining. So all I'm doing is just showing how far we can still improve ourselves, where we are now, which is already wonderful. I think we're already in like 50%. But then the presentation of Eldon a while ago, will bring us zoom us to like 80% already. And that's Metro Manila, and then we see Metro Cebu, we see Metro Davao also with the network of bike lanes, and that's that's really hopeful for us. So one of our wish list is protected bike lanes, of course, protected, or like the class A, class B. That's really wonderful. So yes, we really need enforcement of that. Kasi sa ngayon, like when you go out on the streets, we get so much flack. But again, we're I guess we cyclists are ready for that. This is very new. The piece of real estate that is given to us on the road is also very precious to the motorists, which we understand. But of course, as a road user, we have a right to that 1 to 1.5 meter space that's given to us that we share anyway. If we have to share, we won't hug it if we need to, we need to be alongside other motorists. But of course, if these are the protected bike lanes already that are designated for bikers, there's a reason for why these are protected and exclusive for bikers. So we need protected bike lanes. We see the newly installed bike lanes everywhere, but then again, we see them being violated. We see trucks and buses using them. We see them used as parking lots. So we need enforcement. This is what we did on the road before. Now, we didn't just put up the bike lanes, but we stayed there, 7 of us, and then dumami. Like what Ambassador Michelle said a while ago, like volunteerism is really wonderful because we were out on the streets from June for 3 months. Nandun kami almost every day from Monday to Friday, 2 to 3 hours a day, doing only volunteer work. All our food, all our expenses coming out from our own pockets. But we had a great time, and it's already we see the fruits of all our labor. Um, we started at 7 people, and then we grew to I think hundreds already. Up until now, there are still volunteers on the road that still man our old bike lanes, and then now we plan to do a few volunteer work also of marshalling in different cities, and we're in talks with different municipalities of how we can improve because we understand that we can't do protected agad. There's a budget constraint, there's time element. So I guess the interim solution to these bike lanes that are painted and not protected yet, and again the solution to the mindsets of people. As I said, when you're out on the road or you see posts on your social media, a lot of people hate us and say that we're selfish for not quote unquote sharing the road, but we have our own reasons why. So since we still cannot really enforce, we can't really give protected bike lanes, and enforcement is our interim solution to this, plus making people understand that if we cannot give protection yet on an infrastructure level, then we can use volunteers, we can use manpower to keep the cyclists and all the other road users safe on the road. Kasi again, as everybody's been saying, sustainable transport, cycling is here to stay. Hindi na po kami mawawala sa kalsada. We're growing by the day, we're growing by the month. So let's keep everybody, safe and happy as we share the road. Next is, infrastructure, obviously. This is what we go through. I think this is one of the pedestrian overpass in Commonwealth, where we have to carry our bikes up and down. We're a little bit luckier because we carry alloy or we carry carbon, but then the bike commuters, daily bike commuters, the construction workers, the frontliners, usually we see them, we help them, we fix their bikes. They use steel bikes that are like twice the weight of our bikes that we complain about. We complain about carrying our bikes, but you should see them. Their bikes are really run down. Then they have to go up. They cycle for like a minimum of 10 kilometers one way and another 10 kilometers the other way. So 20, 30, 50 kilometers a day. That's what they do. So again, beautiful what we were seeing again from Eldon, and I'm sure we're seeing from the LGUs also. We're gonna see a lot of these improvements. But again, wish list. That sana, these are the simple solution to this are ramps that we can put like the bars, very very small, very small improvements, but huge help for the bike commuters. Road user education, the laws, the ethics, and women's rights. Okay, like you see now, this guy here in the picture just beat the red light, and of course he didn't die. The guy here didn't die, but he got hit, ran over, and this happens a lot. So we need education, no? Over and we're seeing all these things about infrastructure, and we highly appreciate it. But again, mindsets, again, enforcement of law, again, ethics on the road, respect, and women's rights also. You know, we get catcalls on the road and online. So aside from the physical, we also need the intellectual slash emotional help that we can get. And I think working together um, in rolling this out would be, would be very helpful. And this is what we deserve, of course. Like in other countries, it's families can bike together. You can put your babies on your bike, and then you can go without any fear of getting hit. Um, Protection for your bikes also, bike parking that is secure. It would be great also if we have like guards there, but this one you can show it, it's open to everybody. Then I don't think I don't think any thief will just go there and get your bike. And as I mentioned a while ago, ramps for pedestrians. And there's a lot of things pa, like in the group chat kanina, ang daming discussions, a wonderful discussion that's saying that it's so hard because our weather, it's very humid, it's very hot. So the solutions were made like, okay, you bike early, or the long term is let's plant trees. It's gonna be good for the environment. It's gonna be, it's gonna be shaded, like us who bike commute like kilometers and kilometers. The small shade that we get from building shadows, or we get from a row of trees, sobrang aliwalas na yon sa amin. And then that's where we recover our tiredness, and then we go back again to EDSA where there's totally nothing. So can you imagine if we have that rows and rows of trees? And then I'm sure the people will bike more. Kasi I think, we Filipinos would like, no? Like when they see me commuting, they say, uy, ang galing, you bike commute. And then ang hindrance nila is it's too hot. It's dangerous. We take that out. We put the trees, and then we protect them. Then these people who just wish to go on the road will go on the road if they see that they can go out there, go to work, and come home to their family safely at the end of the day. So we showed you that, no, as I mentioned a while ago, we only started seven people lang po kami. Tapos medyo malaki yung naging impact nung action na yon. And then of course there were a lot of other bike advocates, who were doing their own thing also in their own, in their own field. And then eventually nagkaroon na ng, the bigger, the bike share, the road share. And now we're already seeing it. So from the small cones, very small measly cones that we had to put together before, and then we see the barriers here in Quezon City. Parang we feel so good. And this is not only for us, but it's for the whole Philippines. So we're not claiming anything, but we're claiming everything for the community, and not just for cyclists. No, we're claiming this for all the sustainable transport advocates, all the ones who wish to get on the road. And as everybody is saying in this webinar, that we work alongside each other. Kevin of the Dutch Embassy was saying that nag-start ang cycling culture sa kanila way back the 70s because there was civic action that happened. It didn't come from the government, because the government, of course, will sometimes not know what is really needed on the ground. So when we speak up, when we, show the people in authority and the people in power that, hey guys, we need this, they will heed this. They will listen to us. So I guess we just have to put a little time, volunteer our efforts, and just have your compassion and a love for the whole, for your country, for your neighbor, for the people who use the road. Then I'm sure everything's gonna fall into place. All our dreams, itong wish list natin, will become a reality for everybody. So again, in behalf of Bikers United Movement, maraming pong salamat.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ann Angala, for that wonderful presentation. Like you were saying, there's a long way to go. Your wish list is quite extensive, and I agree with a lot of them, especially since I do bike commute once in a while. Especially when you mentioned about shaded areas and having some place to rest from the heat. As I'm pretty sure everyone here that bike commutes knows that there are certain areas or certain roads in Metro Manila that if you pass at a certain time, it's like you're in another planet. It's just extremely hot. So you want to always divert it. So, being able to implement, shaded areas and especially the law enforcement, right, will make, I guess, encourage other people that are sitting on the fence, whether if they want to take up cycling or not for bike commuting. Hopefully, when they see that, it's a safe environment, that there's a culture for it, and that the private sector also gets in on it and provides, like what I think in the chat discussion we were talking about, proper bike parking and maybe some showers, especially since it's so hot here. You don't have to stay out for so long and then you're already sweating already. So, hopefully that'll encourage a lot more people to get on bikes. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So, moving on to our Q&A session. So guys, if you have any questions that you would like to ask our panelists, put them in and then we'll try to get them answered right away. So to start off, I personally have a question for anyone here that would like to answer. How do you think we can encourage the private sector to get on board, to provide proper bike parking and hopefully showers, given, the nature of our climate here in the Philippines? What's the best way to incentivize it? All right, Anne?
Yeah, I think, there are a lot already who, like the Makati Business Club, they're so much on board in this. Like, we've done a lot of talks with them. And they see the benefits of this. So I guess we just have to get the organizations in place, like meron for the Makati Business Club. And I don't know if there are any more organizations, but at least I think tapping into these, bigger, entities instead of going one by one, then that would be wonderful. Number two, of course, ordinances from the local government. We need that. They have to comply. if you if you say that, hey, this has to be done, then it has to be done. So yeah, I guess those two things. That's what I think, and I'm sure a lot of other people can pitch into, because yeah, again, private sector is a huge push. If we get them on board, we're going all the way already. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else would like to answer that? Any other inputs? Okay. Next question from the audience. Sustainable mobility depends so much on the infrastructure. Is there already a blueprint and timetable to construct safe bike lanes to connect across Metro Manila cities, even across the country? I think Eldon.
Sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question. Can you repeat it? Thank you.
Sure. Sustainable mobility depends so much on the infrastructure. Is there already a blueprint and timetable to construct safe bike lanes to connect across Metro Manila cities and even across the country?
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. Yes, for the purpose of the BAYANIHAN 2 bike lane networks, we already established bike lane networks all across 14 municipalities here in Metro Manila, 4 cities in Metro Cebu and 1 city in Metro Davao. For the expansion of the bike lane networks for 2020, for this year, we are planning to expand the eastern and southern side of Metro Manila. For the southern side, we are planning to connect the Muntinlupa, Parañaque, and Las Piñas, and for the eastern side, Marikina to Rizal. But for 2022, we will be already connecting Navotas, Pateros, and Malabon, which is not those 3 cities and municipality are not yet included in the BAYANIHAN 2 bike lane networks for this year. So yeah, there is a timetable, and I can provide, as mentioned, provide the presentation later. The timeline is included there, and you can see how many kilometers per area, and yeah, basically the timeline as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eldon. That was a great answer. It's really interesting to exciting actually for me to be able to bike from city to city on just one bike lane and not have to, go through different modes of transportation just to get me to my destination. All right. So next question. Equally important is developing a culture of cycling, sharing the road, and environmental awareness, which are anchored on education to transform current mindsets. What is in store for this aspect of promoting cycling? That's from the audience. Anyone?
Hello. Okay.
Hello? All right, Keisha.
I'll just answer. I guess because everybody, the government, civil society, everyone, private sector, we're all trying to really get on board with promoting cycling culture, and it really is an uphill challenge, honestly. Because as an advocate myself, who's been trying to promote cycling culture even before the pandemic, this is already we are on the way. We, as Kevin mentioned in the chat, it was how we developed our cycling culture was really fast. Now it's a matter of really adapting it and mainstreaming it to the streets and to everyone who's not aware. So I think a lot of efforts are coming from the government, but also different cycling groups and different groups, even like I mentioned, everyone is trying to make their own efforts. There are like bike seminars here and there, depending on the city. And there are also LGUs who are trying to promote cycling within their own cities and municipalities. And there's really a long way to go for us, but we are on the way. So some of the ways that we can even try to mainstream it even more is, for example, integrating it into our LTO guidelines, for drivers, because this infrastructure is so new and it's just been a year, and not a lot of people know how to use the bike lanes, for example, or know how to respect the bike lanes. So maybe some things that could be done is integrating it into the LTO. When you get your license, for example. Another way is really, I think Eldon already mentioned it earlier, they're going to start with their IEC campaigns, putting billboards on main roads. And I think every day we also have to remind ourselves as road users, how can I be kinder to everyone else on the road? As a former car driver myself, I became more careful when I started cycling, and now I don't really drive. But you will, this culture of sharing the road with everyone. It helps when you see everyone on the road as human, and it's a little bit, honestly, it's a little bit difficult if you're driving a car. So if you're not yet cycling, I really encourage you to try and cycle, and it will make you a little bit kinder, hopefully.
Yes. So in short, spread the love, right? Be kind to everyone, because that's really the name of the game. Caring for each individual, and I guess like what you said, it's humanizing the whole aspect. It's not just a biker. It could be a mom or a dad, a son or a daughter. Everyone has their own challenges also. So it's just that they chose to ride a bike.
Can I add to that, Matthew?
Sure.
I agree strongly with Keisha that education and allowing people to have that paradigm shift in how they see cyclists is key to changing the culture. And I'm personally an advocate of what they call the sandwich approach, where you have to pursue that not just in the middle with people who know a little bit about cycling, but you also have to bring that paradigm shift down to the most basic level of society for ordinary commuters to actually see that cyclists are valid users of the road and that they need to be protected, and also bring it to the top in showing policymakers that they need to pay more attention, not just in terms of the infrastructure or in terms of laws, but what exactly is being done in the long run, for example, to finance this type of infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about cycling infrastructure, I'm also talking about public transport on the roads, because that's all part of an ecosystem. If there's no place for commuters to wait safely on the street, they will pile onto the road. They will get in the way of cyclists. They will get in the way of motorcyclists, and then there will be more chaos that results from that. So there needs to be equal attention devoted both to the top of society as well as to its bottom. And we should always remember to involve them in developing this culture.
All right, thank you, Kevin. That was really insightful. Okay, next question from Jeffy Baluran. I would like to ask, what is the action plan of the government in achieving sustainable mobility in crowded or in areas where there's a lot of informal settlers in Manila and other metro cities, especially during this COVID pandemic, where physical distancing is crucial and mandatory?
Hi, Matthew. I think if I can start.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the DOTR is concerned, we at the moment we're focusing on providing at least a sustainable mobility on the major roads and some secondary roads to provide the crowded areas in Metro Manila in an additional mode of transportation. But for those local roads in the metro, especially in Metro Manila, I think it would be best if we check with the LGUs because they have their own land use plans, CDPs. I think we can see there how they're planning to transform their spaces for it to be more inclusive, for the space to be inclusive and to cater and allow sustainable mobility.
All right, thank you, Eldon. All right, Eldon, this is also for you. Do you also have plans to install bike lanes along Alabang Zapote Road? It's also a bustling highway despite having a narrow width. As a regular cyclist in that area, I can say that cycling is pretty dangerous there. This is from January.
Yeah, included in what I've mentioned earlier for the expansion of the bike lane networks this year, in the Southern Metro Manila expansion, to connect Muntinlupa, the city of Muntinlupa, the Alabang Zapote Road is included in the network. So at the moment, I think they're already finalizing the procurement activities for the civil works of the bike lane. So we can expect, I think, by December that bike lane infrastructure will be present along Alabang Zapote Road. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eldon. Does anyone else have any more questions?
Matthew?
Yes?
Hi.
Oh, there you go, Anne. Yep.
Yeah, speaking about the Alabang Zapote Road, no, I got a lot of inquiry about that area, and I've gone through that road also. I wanna ask lang, like, from Eldon, what infrastructure is gonna be put there? Because makitid yun, it's really, really narrow. Like, when they were asking me about that area, I said, I think it's, you have to just identify a different bike route that will go through maybe villages. I don't know. Because if you put them alongside the motorists there, you're gonna eat up space of a very small area. So yun lang. It's a thing that if we hear it from you, then it's a welcome thing for the cyclists, because a very new question that was thrown to me like 3 or 4 days ago. So it's very parang very timely that it was asked also in this forum. So again, yeah, it's very narrow, it's very long from Sucat to Muntinlupa. And I'm not from there. I'm just, I just go through that route a lot too.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Based on the plans, what we have seen is it will be a majority of a class 2 bike lanes. Some pavement marking, some areas will be protected by physical separators, bollards and curbs. As for the road space to be taken up for the cyclist, ma'am, we have observed a very dense origin destination commuter trip data on that particular area. So while we will be taking up space for the motor vehicles, we will be providing the existing commuter trips for the cyclists. And we will be encouraging a modal shift as well, because based on our survey last year, at least 54, 55% of the motor vehicle commuters, both private and public, will be willing to shift to active transport once infrastructure will be available. So yeah, for this particular project, the Bayanihan 2 project, we'll be providing the protected bike lanes on that particular road, and and see if it will be more beneficial, because based on the previous studies and case studies in other areas, providing bike lanes will actually increase the capacity of the road, in contrast with what the connotation that taking up space for car users will be detrimental to the capacity of the road. So it will actually increase the capacity and will cater to more commuters. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Personally, I have a question. Is there any map available to the public where they can see already which bike lanes are available?
Yeah, we are working on that. We'll try to produce as soon as possible.
Yeah, that'd be great. Para when you enter it on Waze, baka may ma-update din yan. It'll guide you rin mismo on Waze through the bike lanes. That'd be great. All right.
To share, we're okay. Sorry, Matthew, to interject. We are working with Google Maps for us to activate the cycling routes, and overlay there the existing bike lanes. Not only the intercity bike lanes by the national government, but the intracity bike lanes established by the local the LGUs as well. Thank you.
Great. That'll really help a lot of people plan their commute next time on their bikes. Okay, so from Manel, is the population involved in the process of decision making for determining where to implement the bike lanes through workshops or focus group discussions?
Yeah. What we've considered, as mentioned earlier, is first the population density, the land usage, the commuter trip data, the origin destination, for us to see if indeed people are coming from and going to the particular cities and the activity areas. We also considered the location of the fundamental facilities. So these are the major national government agencies, LGU facilities, medical facilities, level 3 hospitals, major business districts and commercial establishments, and of course, public transport facilities. So we combined all that data, and we came up with the Bayanihan to bike lane networks and prioritized the routes included in the project. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eldon. Anyone else have any other questions that they would like to ask before we move on to our closing remarks? Well, personally, I'd like to ask, maybe each and every one of you, just briefly, what is one way that we can sustain the cycling culture that's already, blossoming here in the Philippines? Like, what's one key element that you can probably cite to maintain this for the future and hopefully, spur a different industry and grow our economy in this way?
If I can start, Matthew, since.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, I think these already mentioned by the panelists earlier. For just I think we just have to monitor and count the number of cyclists, because the previous transport studies, the traffic counts being conducted by the LGUs and certain government agencies before doesn't include actually the pedestrians and the cyclists. So if the decision makers actually see their constituents are using a bike to commute, bike commute, and the number of pedestrians actually, the number of short trips is actually being conducted by the pedestrians. They will actually they will be convinced to set aside budget, to prioritize programs, and to write policies to institutionalize and the establishment of active transportation in their localities and in their offices. Thank you.
Can I answer to that too?
Yes, go ahead, Anne.
Yes, I think one of the priorities, syempre, is safety, so that we keep the numbers up. That's one of our major concerns, no? Because as we said, like Bikers United movement has been catering to the bike to work, and we don't want the numbers dwindling just because there are accidents, just because you don't want your kid to go on the streets and ride the bike because you're not sure if he's gonna get hit by at a bus, because we've seen that. I'm sorry, I don't plan to be morbid, but this is a reality that we see on the road every day. So I guess it's really protection and the health thing, like we've heard kanina, one of the discussions there was the terrible heat that we encounter when we go out on the road. So yung mga ganon, like basic sana, since there are police outposts there, I hope there's like water man lang, something like that, no first aid, and the response team. So again, number one will be, I guess, if you put yourself out there in a vulnerable space, then you want yourself and your family to be protected. Thank you.
All right, Kevin.
Thank you, Matthew. I echo as well the points of both Anne and of Eldon. And I would add to that by saying that don't underestimate the power of lobbying with your local officials. Our embassy is actually working together now with local government officials who are interested in learning more about cycling and cycling infrastructure. But that also has to come from the bottom. It has to come from their voters, their constituents. Show them that this is important to you. Write to them. Even try organizing yourselves. So the example that was given earlier of the Alabang Zapote Road, I think is a great example. I live in that area of Metro Manila. It's been terrible for my entire lifetime, and I say that with no exaggeration. So if constituents of the cities of Las Piñas, Muntinlupa finally say we've had enough of this terribly congested road that takes more than 2 hours to traverse, we want more sustainable infrastructure there. We want tree-lined sidewalks. We want separated bike lanes. We want designated transport stops. I think they will act because these local governments know that they rely on the votes of their constituents to continue in their positions. So while the national government is also doing its part to implement standards and to establish the physical infrastructure, in the end, local support for law enforcement will come from the local government, as Anne put so well earlier in her presentation. So please do not hesitate to use your power as a voter, as a constituent, to make a difference there. That will go a long way in maintaining and developing this cycling culture.
Thank you, Kevin. And Keisha?
Yes, I guess I'll go last, and it's kind of like a summary of what everyone has already said. But I'll make it brief. One is really build the infrastructure and invest in it. Since we're already in an upward trend and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down, it's important to emphasize this even in your localities, in your local government unit. To like what Kevin said, you can demand for that kind of infrastructure because the cycling community is just growing. And once you build the infrastructure, it's important to listen to people's needs and be ready to adjust because we can take all of the guides that we could get from international practices, but in the end, it's really Philippine roads are pretty unique. We have our jeepneys, we have a lot of motorcycles, etc. So we have to be open to adapt and listen to people's needs. Not just and what Anne also mentioned earlier, we have to listen to the vulnerable groups, to the women, to the children, to the persons with disabilities, and make sure that it's safe for everyone, not just for cyclists, but for all road users. And then another point is education and awareness. Infrastructure can go a long way, but if you don't let people know how to treat everyone kindly and how to use the bike lane or how to give way to pedestrians, it's going to be difficult. And enforcement may also play a role there, since that's just how also a lot of our policies get implemented. Is there's initial enforcement involved, along with proper design is also important. Another is collaborate really with the groups, like what I've been mentioning and what you've been seeing here. Anne, Kevin, Eldon, and I. It's not the first time we're meeting here, and everyone. So it's important to really collaborate and synergize with the different groups and see how you can put together projects and how we can work together to make it more mainstream. And lastly, at an individual level, I mentioned this earlier, it's important to really be kind to all road users, because if we want a better cycling culture, it's not even just cycling culture. It's just like culture of transport that's humane. Even if you're not a cyclist, you can treat a cyclist or pedestrian kindly. If you're a cyclist, stop for pedestrians. You're still not the king of the road. So it goes for everyone. It's very cross-cutting to be kind to all road users. So that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Keisha. I'd just like to add, I've always been a cycling advocate, and I'm really just proud of what you and everyone here has achieved. And thank you once again. Just to add on to it, I think also that we shouldn't lose sight of the bigger picture. Why do we bike? Why did we choose this mode of transportation? And that is to combat, global warming and climate change. So in spite of, the noise and everything of policies and, people not wanting to follow or not wanting to have that paradigm shift that Kevin was saying, it should be that at that core that drives us, it's for Mother Earth, basically, for, the whole world of dealing with this crisis of global warming. All right. So, thank you very much, everyone. Ms. Anangala, Mr. Eldon Junicio, Mr. Kevin Punzalan, and Ms. Keisha Mayuga. And of course, Madam Ambassador, thank you very much for gracing our webinar here today. Again, guys, if you have any questions, you can field it in. If we weren't able to answer any of your questions, feel free to send it in the Facebook page or the events page, and then we'll be sure to try to get it answered and probably email you personally if you have any other questions. Okay, so for our closing remarks, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Nanette Repalpa, our national representative of France Volontaires, Philippines.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Matthew. On behalf of France Volunteer, I wish to thank each and every one of you for taking time of your busy schedule today. And special thanks also to Her Excellency Ambassador Michel Boucault and to the French Embassy as well for always supporting us in our events in promoting international solidarity. And to all the speakers, thank you so much for all your insightful contribution. This is indeed a very fruitful and inspiring discussion. And as what our speaker said, it's really a paradigm shift, and it's a long way to go for all of us. But it's just amazing to note that the involvement of so many public and private and volunteer organizations is just a proof that Bayanihan is really embedded in our DNA. And all the efforts will surely pave the way and will bring us really to where we want to be in the future. And lastly, to Bayanihan Sadaan, especially to Sir Paulo and Sir Matthew, we're extremely grateful for all the support you had extended to us and in preparing this webinar. Thank you so much again, and have a great day to all of us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.